Welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie, and I am going to go over what I read in the month of June. I got 14 books read in the month of June. I cannot even believe that. That is the most I've ever read in a month. And I did do a lot of audiobooks. That's how I got to that. Even with raising 4 kids, husband, managing a house, all of that. Got a lot of reading done while working through audio. So let's get started. I'm going to go over some of the ones that I did on audio. I did use Libby as my main source of audiobook. So let's get started. So the first one I read was The Lies That Bind by Emily Griffith. This follows Cecilia and Grant. Cecilia is a reporter, journalist. She meets this guy named Grant at a bar, takes him home. They surprisingly don't do anything, but they get together. And she seems to really fall in love with him. And then 9/11 happened, and he disappears. And she is worried. Where is he? What's happened to him? And she comes across a missing persons poster of another person looking for him. And that's where the story kind of really takes off. And she starts to wonder, like, how well she really knew him. It's very mysterious as to, is he living a double life? Things like that. And so that was actually a really good book. I did enjoy that one. The other one I read or listened to was The Magnolia Inn by Anne-Marie Meyer. This is part of her Red Stiletto book club series. This is the first one, and I really loved this book. It was a very great small town romance. It follows Maggie, who is an interior designer. She goes through a divorce, and she just needs to get out of where she's at. And so her mom sends her to this small town to refurbish this inn. And she kind of makes a deal with her mom that if she can prove to her as an interior designer that she'll back her in getting her business off the ground. And so she goes to this town, and she meets our other point of view, who's Clementine, who has lived there her whole life, and she feels like she's very stuck. And as she's redoing this inn, she comes across a picture of some people from the town and this book club that they had started called the Red Stilettos. And so it kind of goes along this journey of Maggie finding herself again and Clementine figuring out what she needs. It's a really great story. I loved it. It was great, slow romance, small town. Very much reminded me of the Heart of Dixie series on Prime. So if you're into that, I definitely recommend that one. The next one was The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. And that book followed Vanessa, who was a personal assistant for the National Football Association. And it also follows Aiden, who is a football player. And it is a fake dating, slow burn romance. This first Mariana Zapata book that I've ever read, and I absolutely devoured it. I loved it. I thought it was great. The next book that I read was Kulti by Mariana Zapata, and this one follows Saul Castellas and Kulti. Saul is a soccer player, and Kulti is her coach, and he's from Germany. I wasn't a big fan of this one. I felt like she used the word poop a lot, and that drove me nuts. But I just felt like it wasn't as good as The Wall of Winnipeg and Me. So I probably won't pick that one back up ever again. But it wasn't too bad. And then I read a couple, or I listened to a couple of autobiography books. I read The Woman in Me by Britney Spears, and both of these, this one and the next one I'll mention, is very short read for short listens. However, they're so impactful, and it's so disheartening what happens to these two women. And the story of Britney Spears, I'm not a huge Britney Spears fan, but I did grow up listening to her, and what she went through, it really makes a lot of sense. The acting out that we saw in the media. And I definitely recommend you read that, even if you just grew up listening to her music or, saw her on the news, things like that. She has a very empowering story, and it definitely makes my heart hurt for the journey she went on. The next one was I'm Glad My Mom's Dead by Jennette McCurdy. And for the longest time, I never wanted to pick up that book because I felt like the title was very ominous. But I did pick it up after seeing some interviews on YouTube with Jennette McCurdy and some local celebs, and it really got me intrigued in her story and what she went through growing up as a child star is horrifying. Not just as like a child star, but also what she went through growing up. And her mom was very, very toxic, very abusive. And I just couldn't even imagine having to live like that. So I definitely recommend both of those. They were very, very powerful, and I did enjoy both of them. So let's get into what I read physically. I did read several books this month physically, and I enjoyed most of them. So the first one is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. And this is a book that I picked up late last year, and I just could not get into it. And so I was like, I just can't with this book. But then I picked it up and I was like, I'm really enjoying it. This follows Olive and Adam. And Olive is a grad student, and Adam is one of the professors. And it's a fake dating, romance, workplace romance. Basically, they end up creating this fake dating scenario to help Olive with her friends and Adam with convincing the department to keep his to give him his grant. And so it goes along their story and how they work through that journey. And I actually really did enjoy it. I thought it was really cute. I loved the beginning of the chapters. It has these, so I can find one of the chapters. It has like these hypothesis chapter title kind of things. And I thought that was really interesting, and I really enjoyed that. So I definitely would recommend this book. It's a good light read. The next one that I read was Glow of the Everflame by Penn. I finally finished this book. And I did actually read this on my Kindle instead of physically in the book. But I absolutely loved this book, and I cannot wait. In fact, I actually could not stop thinking about this, so I did start the fourth one. But there's some, like, in the middle, it seems to kind of slow a little bit, but then it like really took off at the end, and I was like, what is going on? What is happening? I won't get too much because this is the second in the series, but this is a really good fantasy romance. It reminds me a lot of From Blood and Ash, but it's a really good series. I would definitely recommend picking it up. The next one that I read was Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas, and this follows Misha and Ryan, and they are they in fifth grade they become pen pals, and for the next 7 years they continue to still write to each other and never met. And then Misha ends up running into Ryan at a fundraiser for his band. And he then goes off and shows up at her high school, and she has no idea that it's Misha, her pen pal. And it goes along their story and why he shows up at her high school, and a lot of the backstory as to what's going on with Misha and then with Ryan. And it's a very enemies to lovers, friends to lovers style. I thought it was pretty good. I wouldn't say probably not my favorite Penelope Douglas, but it was a pretty good book. Then the next one I read was The Curious Beginnings by Deanna Raybourn. This was our book club pick of the month. And this was not one of my favorites. I had a really hard time getting through this book. I felt like it was very, very slow. It just seemed to drown on, and I just was not in it. It follows a woman, her name's Veronica Speedwell, and this is in London of 1887. She buries her last aunt, and it's her journey finding out who she really is and where she comes from. And she meets a gentleman by the name of Stoker, and there's a lot of backstory to him as well. But it starts off with her meeting this baron who has convinced her that she is in extreme danger. And I will be honest, like, I started it and I was like, extreme danger of what? Like, she's nobody. It wasn't horrible, but it definitely was not one of my top reads of the month. So if you like a historical mystery, slow, one of my friends classified it as kind of like a Sherlock Holmes woman version. This definitely is for you. Definitely is not for me. I will not be continuing the series. Then the beginning of the month, I finished The Serpent and the Wings of Night and by Carissa Broadbent. I keep thinking about this story and about the characters in this story. So I have, in my next video, I will post my July TBR. And so the second book is on my July TBR because I just can't stop thinking about these characters and how close it is to other books I've read. But this follows Ariel and what is his name? Ryan. And Ariel is a human in a vampire world. And she has to go and fight in this, reminds me of the Hunger Games type world. And she has to fight to become the most powerful. And it's to help her vampire dad that rescued her when she was little. And it's about her story and what she ended up finding out about herself and where she comes from. And I thought it was super good. I really, really enjoyed it. So I cannot wait to pick up the second one. So more to come on that. Then the last one, actually, pause that. I have two other ones that I'm going to talk about before I talk about this one. So the first one is Manacled by Sin Lin U. That was my first ever fanfic pick. It is free on Spotify to listen to. That is where I listen to it at. Do not buy fanfic. It's a cash grab and does not support the author. This one, Manacled, is actually being picked up by a traditional publisher. However, this is a Hermione, Draco Hermione fan fiction, and it follows right after the war, and Hermione gets locked up by Draco's family, and Draco ends up having to be married to her to not marry, excuse me, to procreate, because they are not enough people creating babies. And it's kind of like a Handmaid's Tale mixed Harry Potter. I thought it was an overall good story, and I think I might have enjoyed it more had I been able to read it physically. But I felt like it was super long for a fanfic, and I'm interested to see what happens when they publish it, but through a traditional publisher. So more to come on that. The other book that I read this month was The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon, and I loved that book. It follows a midwife a few years after the Revolutionary War in America, and what she goes through as a midwife, but also as a woman during that time. And it also follows several other characters that she is trying to save from the hard parts of life. And she is standing up for a woman that was raped and then impregnated by that person, and fighting for her justice. And it is just an amazing story. And I definitely highly, highly recommend that book. I could not put it down. It was an amazing story, and the hurt, you feel all the emotions, and I just highly recommend. Then the last one that I read that I just finished yesterday, I absolutely loved. I picked this up a couple weekends ago, and it's called A Not So Meet Cute by Quinn. And this one follows Lottie and Huxley, and it starts out with her getting fired from her job as a writer, and by this person that she claims she's friends with, but is horrible to her. And then there's Huxley, who is a billionaire, and he makes up a ridiculous scheme and says that with this guy that he's trying to get this contract with, that he has a fiance and she's pregnant as well. And that kind of starts off their story. Lottie lives right next to Beverly Hills, and her solution to her problem is, I'm just going to find a fake husband, and I'm going to marry rich. And she ends up running into Huxley on the street through Beverly Hills, and they come into a contractual agreement that she will be his fake fiance, and the storyline that follows with them. And it is hilarious. There were multiple times I was laughing out loud. I thought, my goodness, like, you cannot be serious. This cannot be happening. Really intrigues me to find out if these places really do exist in California. But I absolutely loved this, and I cannot wait to pick up more of Megan Quinn's books. This was recommended by a gal at Barnes & Noble while we were there, and I absolutely loved the banter and the comedy in the book. I would definitely highly, highly recommend. So that is all the books that I read in the month of June. I really hope that you enjoyed this video today. If you did, like, subscribe below. I also have linked all of the books that I've mentioned today down below in the description, so that you can get your favorite of that I mentioned, something that you want to add to your TBR. If you have followed all the way to the end of this video, give me a heart emoji and tell me what one you loved out of the books that I mentioned, and which one you want to add to your TBR for the month of July. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Welcome to July, and I will talk to you guys soon.